Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back. I'm Supreme Verdicts, a practicing attorney by day and a magic strategist by night. After a long day of working on the rule of law, I come home to master the laws of magic. Today, we're going to be diving into an Avatar: The Last Airbender pre-release primer as I walk through pre-release information, the different archetypes that you can draft, the bending interplay with the archetypes, because a lot of these mechanics feed into multiple of the archetypes, of course, the strengths of each of the 5 colors and how they play in with all of it, as well as other mechanics. Let's dive in. Long ago, the 4 nations lived together in harmony. Then, everything changed when WotC brought back seeded packs. That's right, just like in Tarkir Dragonstorm, we were going to have seeded packs for different characters. Aang for white, Katara for blue, Azula for black, Zuko for red, and Toph for green. Suki and Sokka are going to watch from the sidelines, but just like normal sealed, it'll still be 6 booster packs, but 5 are going to be regular play boosters, and 1 will be seeded to a particular color and the character that corresponds with it. So unlike Tarkir Dragonstorm, where you're going to have a wedge that your cards are more aligned with, this will be one specific color, which makes it a little bit easier and stronger to play those cards, and also incentivizes you to have those as one of your main or primary colors, or even a splash, depending on what might be open or not in your colors when you get your sealed pool. With all seeded packs, this just means you're more likely to get powerful spells of that particular color. I believe it's a guaranteed rare and one of your uncommons to be in the color of those, of whichever color you happen to get, but it might be a little different depending on how they play it. And again, it's one of your 6 packs. It's just to help push you in a particular direction. That way you're not completely up to luck, and it makes sealed a little bit more fun and interesting, as if you go with this color, you're rewarded for headed in that direction. Okay, we're going to briefly look at all 10 of the archetypes that have been officially listed as the drafting archetypes, and then we'll look at the color overlaps, like white, and the different archetypes that it falls into and what those have in common for particularly powerful cards. Now, this whole conversation is going to be focused entirely on common and uncommon creatures, with a little bit of common and uncommon other types of spells, as those are going to be the most important types and rarities when it comes to limited. You have to eat your vegetables. High creature count and just attacking is the best way to win, unless you are skilled enough to go in a specific direction with synergy or other forms of control and build your deck around that. In sealed, this is even more difficult because you're not drafting. You are more likely going to just need to put together a nuts and bolts deck that can do the thing. Let's look at them. For blue-white, for Azorius, we have flyers. Take to the sky with Aang and his friends, gather a team of flyers, and soar like an airbender. In blue-black, it's a draw 2 mechanic, which we have seen previously. Hunt for knowledge using clues and other draw effects to trigger your second draw reward cards. The long game is yours, a little bit of a control sub-theme here. Black-red, or Rakdos, is Fire Nation aggro, as everything changes when the Fire Nation attacks. It rewards you for being aggressive with firebending, allowing you to burn it on the extra effects, often printed on the cards that have firebending themselves, which is convenient. Gruul, or red-green, is Earth Rumble ramp. Use your mana ramp and your earthbending to make 4+ power creatures, with various rewards for those, and rack up the bonuses to claim the title belt. Green-white, Selesnya, is allies. A world united is unstoppable. Play allies and generate tokens to go wide and hit your enemies hard from all sides. We have white-black as sacrifice. Victory, Orzhov, sacrifice. Victory comes at a cost. Play small creatures and clues, then gain the upper hand when you sacrifice them. It's nice that clues and so artifact sack also counts in this category a lot. Blue-red, is it combat lessons? We'll be playing creatures that care about casting non-creature spells, and then teach your foes a lesson about your martial prowess. Prowess has a big comeback in this set, which I'm very excited. I'm a huge fan of the prowess mechanic. We have black-green, Golgari for +1/+1 counters, accrue power by any means, stack up counters to gain bonuses, and control the Earth Kingdom from within. I love the flavor from this set, just so much. Red-white Boros is go wide aggro. Lead the rebellion with an army of allies and tokens that you can enhance for devastating attacks. And lastly, as always, we have green-blue Simic for ramp plus lessons. Turn your knowledge into power, ramp, and draw cards to play big creatures while getting lessons in your graveyard. There are various uncommon signpost cards that help lead you into these particular archetypes. However, as you'll notice as we've gone through this, a lot of these archetypes cross over in a variety of ways, and specifically at the intersections of the different bending mechanics where you can see how one might play into the other. For example, with your draw 2 for blue-black, the clue tokens are going to be incredibly useful, and they're very helpful in waterbending mechanic, but waterbending can also work with small 1/1 tokens, such as in a go wide strategy. The bending mechanics are at play, and therefore the archetypes are not specific to them, but allow you to build the decks in various ways. You can even kind of go off kilter entirely and say, rather than do a black-green +1/+1 counters deck, there's likely a red-green +1/+1 counters deck, or a Jund counters deck, just by virtue of earthbending causing counters and being prominent in those particular colors. With these various payoffs and such, like I said, flyers for blue-white might be an archetype, but you could also just do an Azorius waterbending archetype, relying on the white token creation and the blue waterbending cards and clue payoffs in order to completely subvert this archetype on its head and play cards that feed into what you want to play. The set runs really deep from a first glance. We'll see how aggressive it is, to see if you have time to set up those payoffs. That was the issue in some other sets before, like Phyrexia All Will Be One, which had a lot of depth at first glance, but ended up being a little bit too fast to be able to explore those cards. So hopefully this will allow a lot of different play and walking around, especially when you look at how much color fixing there is for the set. We have a full cycle of dual lands, and all of them can sacrifice themselves for card draw, which plays both into the draw 2 mechanic and into the earthbending and +1/+1 to counters mechanic, and sacrifice mechanic, which is just so fun that it adds another layer of depth to everything here. Figuring out how the different bending mechanics, along with clues, lessons, shrines, spirits, allies, and just all the mechanics of this set slot into the archetypes, contributes to this level of depth. Each of the white archetypes, flyers, allies, sacrifice, and go wide aggro, involves making little creatures, and as many of them as you can. Even with the flyers deck, a lot of the effects give flying to some of your creatures, allowing you to peck in bit by bit or buff up your flyers, which lends itself naturally to helping when you just have a wide board. Some of these creatures are evasive, such as for this Azorius archetype, but many of them are also allies to go along with the various ally synergies in the color. The tokens, as I mentioned before, pair wonderfully with waterbending as a mechanic, which might even be just the stronger way for Azorius to lean. Can you tell I'm high on blue-white waterbending? I'm very excited to try that out. But a couple enigmatic cards for white, and that play into all of these strategies particularly well, are going to be Invasion Reinforcements. This is a 1 and a white, 1/1 human warrior ally with flash. Instant speed, never hurts. And we've seen this kind of card before, but it might even perform better in this set, just with all the different ways that it feeds into the archetypes. When this creature enters, make a 1/1 white ally creature token. I also do just love the flavor text. Many of those who aided in the invasion of the Fire Nation were not soldiers by occupation, though they were warriors at heart. Incredible. Absolutely beautiful. I love the foggy swamp benders in the background here. But this card absolutely is going to be great in all the white strategies, along with Water Tribe Rallier. 1 and a white. I love my 2-drops in limited, nuts and bolts. 2/2 human soldier ally, again, with the ability Waterbend 5. Again, this will be paid off less, you can pay it more and more easily when you have more creatures and artifacts that you can tap to pay the cost. And we've seen this effect before be really powerful in limited games, especially grindier ones. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card with power 3 or less from among them and put it into your hand. It's a card draw for 5 mana, but less than 5 mana because this can tap for it. So 4 mana, or even less depending on what you have. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Now you do need to build your deck around it a little bit, but both of these cards together kind of feed on the idea that you have small things that will continue to pay off your various cards. A lot of the white cards in general are smaller costed, but come with some added effect, and therefore Water Tribe Rallier I think will be an incredible card draw engine in a lot of ways. Across blue's various archetypes, we have Draw 2, Combat Lessons, Ramp and Lessons, and Flyers. Often, the lessons on instants and sorceries cover all of these archetypes with the exception of Flyers. However, a lot of the blue flying creatures have various payoffs for non-creature spells or lesson spells as well. Think some of the various waterbending cards or non-creature spells matter. For example, in Teo Spirited Glider for 3 and a blue, a 1/4 human pilot ally with flying. Whenever one or more creatures you control with flying attack, draw a card, then discard a card. When you discard a non-land card this way, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. Notably, this plays in well, of course, with flyers. Non-land cards are going to be helpful, and yes, I recognize there's plenty of non-land cards, but your lessons can be a part of that, and there are other lesson cards that benefit off of lessons from flying, such as the 2-mana flyer that gets +1/+0 if you have a lesson in your graveyard, I believe. But this one also synergizes with +1/+1 counters going on to creatures. There's a lot of overlap across the board here, which is fantastic. And actually, for the second blue card that I want to show, this is not even a creature card. I'm breaking my own rules here because it's so good, and I'm even going to talk about it later. It also pays an homage to some of Magic's history, which I adore. Here we have 1 in a blue, Accumulate Wisdom. It's an instant lesson. Oh, we have here just incredible art. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put one of those cards into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Impulse. Already a fine card in Limited, a fine card in Magic in general. However, put each of those cards into your hand instead if there are 3 or more lesson cards in your graveyard. As I said, among blue and the various archetypes, not only are there various payoffs for casting lessons, there's various ways to discard them and then just benefit off of having lessons in your graveyard. And Accumulate Wisdom, a 2-mana draw 3 effect, is pretty dang good. And again, to prove your worth as scholars, you have to contribute some worthwhile knowledge. Wan Shi Tong. Incredible. Love the art, love this set. I think blue over here really synergizes well across the different archetypes. Again, I'm a little down on flyers. I haven't actually checked how many creatures have reach in the set, so maybe flyers is just a killer fast clock. But I do love the lesson mechanic, and I think a lot of blue's other archetypes work really well here. Black, black, black. Across the black archetypes, there's not a lot of overlap. Draw 2, Fire Nation aggro, sacrifice, and +1/+1 counters. In general, many of these don't fit together conceptually. However, the black cards do kind of slot in here well and attempt to fix this lack of synergy, in the sense that each of these creatures are spread out across the synergies and have some kind of micro advantage attached to them that barely touches all of them. Very similar to the direction black is going, and Limited Level Ups has a great episode about how to draft black, where the idea is incremental advantage. None of these cards scream out, oh, put me in the sacrifice deck. I'm the best sacrifice payoff that there can be. And there's a couple, but none at common and uncommon that are just going to be an always picker. Put me in draw 2. I'm the best draw 2 card that you can find. However, all of them are a little bit good in each of the categories, which I think works well for black, although it kind of forces it to be more in a support color role, as opposed to one of the main colors in each of these particular categories, which most people do anyway, just for the good black removal. However, when we look at some of the cards, you can see how this crosses over. For this, for example, we have Beetle-Headed Merchants, 4 and a black, it's a 5/4 human citizen. Whenever this creature attacking, aggressive, we love it, Fire Nation aggro, you may sacrifice, Orzhov sacrifice, another creature or artifact. If you do, draw a card, boom, draw 2 mechanic, and put a +1/+1 counter, +1/+1 counters on this creature. It hits all 4 of the archetypes in just one card, kind of summarily put together. None of these are incredible effects. It's a 5-mana 4/4, 5/4. That's fine for playing aggressive. You probably want cheaper creatures, but sure, whatever. It has a sacrifice ability on attack. That's not a free sack outlet, but it's a sacrifice. Sure. You put a 1/1 counter on it. It's not like you're putting 1/1 counters all over the place. It just gets a little bigger, which also fine, makes it a little bit better at attacking, which is nice, and you draw a card, which is great, and feeds the draw 2 strategy. It doesn't automatically do any of these, but it does a little bit for each of them. It's up to you to build the board state to take advantage of this. Similarly, there's also Buzzard Wasp Colony, or 3 and a black, 2/2 flying. I know, a 4-mana 2/2 is never really a good card. But there is an ETB trigger on this card, which kind of helps offset that badness, and so I'm hopeful this card will see some play and actually be okay. For Bird Insect with flying, when it enters, you may sacrifice an artifact or creature. Boom, sacrifice. If you do, draw a card. Boom, draw 2. Whenever another creature you control dies, if it had counters on it, put its counters on this creature. it takes 1/1 counters. Once again, it hits pretty much all the check marks except for maybe Fire Nation aggro, which you can always attack with it. It is a flyer. And even then, this might not be the perfect card in that fit to begin with. It's not a great card, but I'm hoping it can play well depending on how the set works out. What doesn't survive the Sea Wong Desert assures that the Buzzard Wasps do. Red takes a different approach from black in being a primary secondary color, which I realize is a confusing sentence, and I'll restate that. Black is a very good support color in that each of its cards kind of feed into a lot of the different strategies in minor advantage ways. Red has specific cards that fit in really, really well with specific strategies, but don't have a lot of overlap. This makes it good as a support color when you're in that particular strategy, but otherwise a poor card. I don't think certain red cards will see particularly high in-hand win rates. There it is. In-hand win rates, but might be better cards than we give them credit to. For example, the red archetypes are Fire Nation aggro, Earth Rumble ramp, Combat Lessons, and Go Wide aggro. We have 3 effective aggressive strategies there, with 1 being a ramp and 2 being small. And then Combat Lessons, which can play either a control role, going slower, or more of a tempo-y role, where it's just kind of putting on the pressure again and being aggressive. In this sense, I think when it's paired with white or black, it's just pure small creature aggro, eke out value aggression. When it's with green, it becomes big creature aggro, and with blue, it can be a little bit of either with the tempo and firebending instance and prowess. I think it'll be a good secondary color for pretty much any of these strategies, and let's take a look at a couple of cards. We have to look at 3 here to really fit the different strategies, as we see Treetop Freedom Fighters for 2 and a red, 2/1 haste, human rebel ally, and when it enters, make a 1/1 white ally creature token. Really good in an aggressive deck. It helps with the go wide. For red-white aggro, it's good in red-black aggro just because it makes multiple bodies and has haste, which is aggressive. But it's not great in ramp or in prowess. However, Rough Rhino Cavalry for 4 and a red, 5/5 with Firebending 2 Human Mercenary can be really good in the big ramp strategy with that Exhaust 8 abilities to turn it into a 7/7 trample, only until end of turn for the trample, which is fantastic. The Firebending 2 can be helpful. Probably not going to play it, but could be helpful in the Combat Lessons category. But it's great in ramp, as you can see. And of course, there's Zhong the Deserter for 2 and a red, 2/3 Human Rebel Ally with Firebending 1 that has an Exhaust ability to put a counter on Zhong. And then when you next cast a lesson card, copy it and choose new targets for the copy. Awesome in your spell casting. It's a cheaper card with Firebending, which makes it easier on the front end if you wanted to go red-black aggro or if you wanted to go with blue-red spells. It works a lot better, but you can't really have... This card doesn't fit in every single one of the archetypes, unlike a lot of the white cards did. It's a trade-off, but I think red will be a good support color. Oh, green. Green's another kind of interesting one. It's very similar to white in that it has some very just overall powerful cards that fit into a lot of its categories. Green's archetypes are Earth Rumble ramp, allies, +1/+1 counters, and ramp plus lessons. Notice 2 of those are ramp based, and then the +1/+1 counters comes from you earthbending onto your lands, which kind of plays in with the ramp element as well. Allies is kind of the odd man out here, where it is much better to have a bunch of small little creatures as opposed to having ramp and then some big payoffs. That being said, I think green is at its strongest when it's earthbending. This makes it work really well in the Gruul and Golgari strategies, and also gives power to Simic to have something to do with all your mana after the fact, where you can just beat face with it. Once you've ramped a lot, you cast a couple big earthbending cards and you're good to go. There are definitely some cards that work for the Go Wide Selesnya strategy, but they're much more specific. For example, here we see Toph the Blind Bandit for 2 and a green, X3 Human Warrior Ally. When Toph enters, Earthbend 2. A land becomes a 0/0 creature with haste, put 2 counters on it, and when it dies or is exiled, return to the battlefield tapped. And Toph's power is equal to the number of +1 counters on lands you control. Base level, this is 3 mana for a 2/3 and turning one of your lands into a 2/2. That's fine. That is already pretty decent. You think you're so tough? This is a good value card and we'll see play in all of the green strategies. But it's by far the weakest in the Selesnya strategy. In the Selesnya strategy, you get 1 ally. You do get 2 bodies, I will say. You do get 2 bodies, and that is still a benefit, but it's not as strong as it is in some of the other archetypes, I think. However, on the other side, Flopsy, Boomy's Buddies, is a 6 mana, so 4 and 2 green, 4/4 ape goat. When Flopsy enters, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. And each creature you control with power 4 or greater can't be blocked by more than one creature. This card works great in a lot of the ramp strategies. You ramp up to it, you buff up your whole board of Earthbent lands, and they now have trouble being blocked. But it's also really good in the Selesnya strategy, where if you go wide enough, this is a massive anthem to swing in for the win. Oh, that's a good boy. Who has a soft belly? Boomy, King of Omashu. Incredible. This was a great episode. The point is that a lot of these cards work really well in the green archetypes, but Selesnya has a little bit less options. And I think that's okay, though, because of how strong white is with going wide. You don't need a bunch of the green payoffs. You really just need a few that finish the game there. 34 out of the 54 instants and sorceries at common and uncommon in the set are lessons. You can just pick those up as you go. You'll find that the lesson strategy kind of feeds into itself to a degree, with just a little bit of attention to make sure that you're able to get that. The dual lands offer great fixing, and like I said, with the sacrifice effect built into it that draws you another card, they fit into multiple categories as being additional payoffs later in the game to eke out even more advantage. There's various payoffs for the shrines, and a few of them are pretty strong for the individual shrines if you're going 5-color shrines, and you can definitely double that up with some of the ramp cards and the payoffs that come with that. And lastly, I do want to talk about some of the homage cards. Every set of Magic, and as you play more and more Magic, and learn more about Magic, you get to appreciate some of the cards that are printed that pay an homage to older cards or fan favorites. Modern Horizons 3 did an incredible job of this with Serum Visionary versus Serum Visions, paying an homage to that, or Null Drifter and Mull Drifter. My two favorite cards so far of this set, and I'm sure there's more that I just didn't recognize, but two of my absolute favorite cards because of this homage they pay is Meteor Sword, for example. A 7-mana artifact equipment, which is Saga's Meteor Sword. Awesome moment in the show. When this equipment enters, destroy target permanent. Equipped creature gets +3/+3, and equip for 3 mana. Crafted from a fallen meteor, symbolizing the sudden change that wielding it brings. Please note this can destroy lands. That is very helpful in this particular format. And it's a very clear homage to Meteor Golem, which is a 7-mana 3/3 golem, and we did see this reprinted in Foundation, so you might remember it. Artifact creature, and when this creature enters, destroy target non-land permanent and opponent controls. Very fun homage, very similar cards, and you see how they play off of each other in name and effect. I think that creates a lot of fun. Secondarily, there's also one of the new cards that I already showed you, Accumulate Wisdom. The look at the impulse, and then if you have 3 or more lessons, you can just draw 3. Based on the name and based on the effect, Accumulate Wisdom is very similar to Accumulated Knowledge, a very fun card from old standard sets and now found in cubes, as well as Forgetful Fish, if you're a fan of that format. 1 in a blue for an instant to draw a card, and then draw cards equal to the number of cards named Accumulated Knowledge in all graveyards. Over time, you start to draw more and more cards with it, and the card becomes stronger, very similar to Accumulate Wisdom. The two cards kind of play off each other in name and in effect, and I find that to be so much fun in both the flavor of Avatar, kind of creating a unique spin on it and modernizing these cards to 2025, while we can still see how they relate to Magic of old. I hope you've enjoyed going through a lot of the primer for the pre-release, as well as learn something for your upcoming pre-release. However, there are more games to play, strategy to analyze, and unfortunately, work to do. I'm Supreme Verdicts. Have a wonderful rest of your day.